You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Merrimack 81-49 at Simon Scott Assembly Hall in a game that featured kind of a sluggish first half for the Hoosiers. Indiana only led 36-30 at halftime, but used a big spurt early, and then the bench played pretty well there over the second part of the second half as the Hoosiers outscore Merrimack 45-19. To create the decisive final margin. The win brings Indiana to 8-2 on the season, and this was, as they mentioned at the end of the broadcast, a nice way to kind of put the Wisconsin loss, the Wisconsin collapse in the rear view, get a nice win, have a lot of guys do things you can feel positive about as Indiana looks ahead to next weekend's really important matchup against Notre Dame for a team that could really use a nice non-conference win away from home. That'll be an opportunity for Indiana to do so. And I think we saw some things today to make you feel good about Indiana's chances in that game. I'm your host, Jared Morris. I'm here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Andy Bottoms, and this is the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And let's start this show the way that we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And so for the banner moment, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the second half, which is when Indiana really, won this game and kind of put it out of reach after that sluggish first half. And with 14:50 to go in the second half, Xavier Johnson hit a nice little pull-up too, which made it 51-36 Indiana. And really at that point, it kind of felt like, okay, Indiana's in firm control and we can kind of cruise here for the rest of the game. And, it was the culmination of a really nice start to the second half for Xavier Johnson, who had 4 points and 2 assists to open the half, had 1 assist on a three-pointer to Miller Kopp, hit a couple of free throws as Indiana went on that 17-6 run early on. And I really just thought it was a nice bounce-back performance by Xavier today after his struggles against Wisconsin. He was much more under control. He made better decisions. And that's really, to me, it's one of the most important things that could come out of this game. He was the big story at Wisconsin, especially as in the second half, he just kind of tried to do too much. And he's just so important to what Indiana wants to do this season. So, to me, how did he bounce back? And I thought, look, in the first half, made a couple of bad passes against the zone, that led to some runouts from Merrimack going the other way. So it was nice to see in kind of that decisive stretch of play, Xavier was really important to what Indiana was doing. And so that, to me, is the most important thing that we saw today in a game that Indiana was always going to be able to dominate with their bigs down low, and they did. But it was nice to see Xavier bounce back and have a good performance. All right, our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 5th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call and their first as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. And, look, Christmas is coming up. As you think about what Christmas presents you want to get your loved ones, make sure that you shop online at homefieldapparel.com. For the IU fans in your life, Home Field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you're going to find anywhere with beloved logos, like 2 different versions of the Bison. And for fans or graduates of other college teams, Home Field probably has something for them too. My mom, who hopefully is not listening to this, she put on her Christmas list a sweater that's really soft inside. And so, of course, the first thing I thought of was the crew neck sweaters by Home Field Apparel. She's a graduate of Colorado University, went on there, bought a crew neck. It just arrived a few days ago. She is going to love it. So Indiana fan, non-Indiana fan, whatever, Home Field will take care of you. And look, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through the Kelley School of Business. What could be better than that? So go to homefieldapparel.com, use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire order, your first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Once again, the website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, well, it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will start with Andy Bottoms. Andy, your bottoms line on this Indiana victory.
Yeah, I'll save some thoughts on Xavier Johnson because I thought the point you made was a good one, but interesting the way Woodson kind of handled him late in the first half. But that wasn't really the bottom line of the game today. Another game where the first half was uninspiring in a lot of regards. Really let Merrimack get comfortable early in the game by overhelping a little bit and then just getting in scramble situations defensively. One of them was a tough shot that they hit toward the beginning that was toward the end of the shot clock, but a couple of the others seemed preventable from a certain element. So let them get in there. I think the move to play all 5 bench guys at the same time didn't really work very well in the first half. There was a pretty good drop off there where I think that unit got outscored 8-3 in a stretch. Once I think TJD was the last starter to leave, they got outscored, really let Merrimack get back in the game a little bit there. But then, as this team has been wont to do, come out and play the other half with a different level of intensity. And if Ryan were here, I'm sure he would reference the noon tip against a against a poor.
It's completely ridiculous.
Absolutely, he might even say that. Who's to say? But so anyway, I do think that plays a factor into it a little bit, but also we're kind of past the point where that kind of excuse making makes a ton of sense for for this group. But did like the focus they came out with in the second half. Thought a lot of effort plays, scored multiple times off of free throw misses, and were able to get the ball back and convert in that scenario. So really thought the effort in key stretches of the second half was really good. And again, you see a team play that well, hold Merrimack to I think 0.56 points per possession. I think in the second half, the way that I had it, you see the potential ceiling upside, whatever you want to call it. And in some ways, I think that makes it more frustrating when you see the stretches of play that aren't up quite to that standard for for longer than a couple minutes. But overall took care of what they had to do. We're able to get a lot of guys some minutes. I thought that second unit played better in the second half. And we're able to get some guys rest as well. And Race Thompson was fantastic. I guess I'll end with that. Probably another thing that Ryan would say if he was here, but he had some really big plays, solid inside, and I'm sure we'll be talking about him more as well.
He undoubtedly would, but he's still sleeping, so he cannot be here. Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good performance. I'm a slightly different than a lot of people. I didn't think the first half was all that bad. They hit a crazy 3, otherwise it would have been 9 points. I do think our second unit came in and was not sharp defensively during that stretch, but only gave up I think 1 or 3 points in their stretch of play. I thought they were really intense defensively to start, almost too much. So they were giving up drives and overcommitting on their rotations. So I don't think it was necessarily good, but I was really concerned after a loss like at Wisconsin and you're playing a Merrimack to come out and not have intensity. I looked, they were in stances, they were flying around, they were playing extremely hard. And I thought Merrimack just hit some shots. Yes, you want to be up a little bit more. I thought Indiana could have been up 10 or 12. The point spread was 20. And so if you win by 10 in the first half, 10 in the second half, you reach what people think was going to be there. So I didn't think it was a tale of two halves, slightly different than Andy. I just thought that Indiana played excellent in the second half. Merrimack hit some shots in the first half, but I thought there were a lot of good things. Thought there were a lot of good performances by individuals. That's why you schedule a team like this. I know we have schedule issues, a lot of people think, but I think we got out of this game what Indiana needed to get out of this game was a bounce back from Wisconsin, some pretty solid play, some improvement, and some areas of concern still around. But I thought it was overall a good game and an exciting game to watch, as it can be against teams like this. And Merrimack was only down 11 against Gonzaga, and it could have easily been 9 or 10 against Indiana, given a couple shots. So pretty pleased with this performance, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the issue with the first half, Coach, because I think you're right. I think they were playing hard on defense.
Right.
It was just more a matter of execution.
Right.
I think the issue, and again, part of it is just the ghosts of seasons past where we've seen these underwhelming teams come in here and shoot well. And so it was just another first half where, whether it's because of effort or execution, Merrimack was getting some open threes and they were allowed to get comfortable early from behind the arc, and they made some, but Indiana cleaned that up, to their credit. So I think that's mostly what people were a little bit frustrated by with the first half.
One of the things, and you can dismiss this in the chat mob or whatever, but man, however the first 5 or 6 minutes go, everyone's making their decisions on whether I use here, it's hard to be up 10 in the first 5 or 6 minutes. Everyone has run their scouts and their set plays, and they're going to run their best stuff early. And, it stretches out in most basketball games. Your first quarter, your first 10 minutes are going to be a little tighter regardless of that. So there has to be a level of patience in that. And that's maybe where I'm coming from.
So I think, you look at the box score, certainly if you paid attention to that second half, I think one of the big storylines is going to be Jordan Geronimo, who finished with 13 points and 13 rebounds. Really filled up the stat sheet, Andy. And, it's interesting because, Tony Adranya did a Twitter Spaces at halftime, kind of talking about the first half. And he really spent a lot of time talking about Jordan Geronimo's struggles against the zone in the first half, which were there. He was really struggling to make the right decision, had a couple of turnovers. And to his credit, really just came out in the second half and kind of used his athleticism and his activity to just overwhelm them. He had that incredible offensive rebound off of the free throw, was able to convert, finished with 5 offensive rebounds. I mean, we'll get to the numbers, but Indiana's advantage on the glass today was just out of this world. Rebounded by like 30 or something. Here's my question about, Jordan Geronimo. What did you see from him today that's translatable to Big Ten games? Obviously, the effort is always, translatable. But, this Merrimack team is one that Indiana was going to be able to dominate with their athleticism and size, and they did. So as you look at Jordan, obviously, building confidence, making some of those hustle plays, is there anything else you saw that was kind of a building block for him as he looks to become more consistent against better competition?
We've talked a lot about his shot mechanics looking good. Just sometimes shooting the ball a little bit too hard, a little too long. So he showed some good touch today. I think even at the free throw line, he did miss one of them, but I think he was good from the free throw line outside of that. But I mean, honestly, what you said with the athleticism is probably what you'd look for. I mean, if he just was an energy guy that came in off the bench and kind of flew around and got rebounds and did some of those things, I think, he was one of the guys at times that struggled, I thought, with communication defensively in the first half. It's a little bit difficult the way that Merrimack spaces you out and forces you to make some decisions in that regard. And if your communication is not good, you'll miss some things there. And I think he's still trying to work through the fact that his athleticism can make up for making bad decisions at times and things like that. And I thought Tony made a good point. I remember him doing the same thing in the Syracuse game. When he broke down the film of that, it was very clear like what they had told Geronimo to look for against the zone. And sometimes he would make the pass without seeing if it was actually there, versus I thought the second half he slowed down a little bit. If there was an opportunity to take a shot instead of looking immediately to pass, I thought he did that as well. But I mean, I think the effort and athleticism related plays that he made are 100% translatable to the Big Ten and are a lot of what you'd love to see off the bench to really keep that energy up, so that if you get off to a good start, it doesn't drop off because you've got a guy coming in and playing that way. Just the rebounding is a little bit odd as you think of the game. I mean, Merrimack would basically like shoot the ball and then all 5 guys would try to get back on defense. So they weren't going to get a ton of offensive rebounds. And he's a guy from an athleticism standpoint that's just going to go clean all that up. But he's a guy who can certainly rebound out of his area and all the athleticism things like that, to me, 100% translates. And that's what you need him to do. He's not going to get a double every game. But if he is a guy who just based on effort alone can probably get you 6 to 8 points if he's on.
Great quote from Jordan. Dustin Toperic just had this on Twitter. This is from Jordan Geronimo. All these little things matter. Rebounding is something I'm gifted in. God gave me this body to get rebounds. Coach, would you say something similar about yourself?
No. Unless it's a donut that has bounced off the table and is about to hit the floor, then I have the body to grab that one.
What were your thoughts on Jordan Geronimo today?
He really is solid, and he's just learning the game. And that's where the first half zone offense, I agree with Coach Adranya. And I think even in the second half, he takes a shot that probably he wasn't supposed to, or he could take if he was open, but he was contested and he bricked it off to the side. But, playing that short corner, getting that dump down for a dunk and all of those kinds of things, that's stuff he can do. He's really, I think, a solid asset on the ball defender. I think he and Tamar struggled with some switching and some over closing out, especially in the first half. And I think that to me is where the first half kind of got close, is when those guys came in and they lost a little bit defensively, which resulted in their 3-point minus, if you would, in their play, which kept the game a little closer than everyone wanted it to be. But, boy, what an athlete. And you can do so much as a coach with that athleticism. If there is a guy that is that wing guy, his length and his ability to get off the floor, he can guard the bounce a little bit. He can make it tough to shoot over. I think that's going to be great. And then again, rebounding, because our wings aren't really great rebounders. Someone mentioned it in our Discord channel, is really spot on comment that, we have wings that are there to shoot the ball. They struggle in getting rebounds, and Geronimo can come in and do that, even though he's playing the 4. If he's on the floor, probably Race or TJD is not. And so we rely on our posts to get rebounds, and that's just an important part. I thought he had a fantastic night, struggled in a little bit of aspects, but again, you look at it over 40 minutes, the team played really well. If you look at it over the minutes that Geronimo played, he played really well. You coach to perfection, but you're never going to have it. And so Geronimo was awesome today.
Yeah, and look, we've seen enough of these early starts to know the first halves are often really sluggish. The goal is, okay, when you go in at halftime and you regroup and you've broken a sweat, can you come out and dominate? And Indiana did that in the second half today. And so I think to me, it's pretty easy to take some of the underwhelm that was pretty easy to feel in the first half and focus on the second half, because I think that was really more important and more telling from this game. Look, I don't want to, just totally dismiss what Trace and Race did today. I mean, I think this is what they should have done, but the two combined for 30 points, 16 boards. They were really efficient, did a pretty good job of making their free throws. Trace had 3 block shots. Andy, the one thing that I continue to, I guess, worry a little bit about with Trace, as he, really has just become a better player in so many areas is, and you saw Merrimack start to do this, is Big Ten teams are going to scout him and they're going to start shot faking everything. And so, he has become a much better shot blocker, and he obviously has the freedom to do that. I remain a little bit worried about how that's going to translate to the Big Ten with better guys and better scouts. So that to me continues to be something to watch for, because he's so important. He's got to stay on the floor, avoid fouls, and avoid just flying past guys and giving up, wide open layups. But otherwise, I was impressed with him today because, he struggled against Wisconsin. It was kind of one of those Trace games where he struggled to just get into the flow, and he came out, ready to lead and dominate today, and did that. And so even when some things were, not going great for Indiana early on, they could count on him. And he was kind of that anchor. He and Race were those anchors in the first half that kept Indiana ahead, kept Merrimack at arm's length, even when they were making threes, even when some things weren't going well. So, you don't take a ton from it, because this is what they should do against a team like this, but still kudos to those guys for leading like they should.
Yeah, it was the way that Merrimack played their zone was kind of interesting, odd, whatever you want to say. I mean, they left a ton of room in the middle of the floor. I know that's where everybody's going to say there's always space there, but there was like a huge gulf in the middle where IU really took advantage and was able to get them the ball. And as you said, especially early, I mean, if you go back to the beginning, Merrimack's making those threes, but IU was keeping pace. TJD gets to the free throw line, makes both. He scores again inside. Race scores inside. Race gets to the free throw line. But they were really, despite, a zone that might say settle for threes, IU did a good job of continuing to get them involved. And same thing at the beginning of the second half. I thought they really got those guys in it as well, even though TJD got blocked early on. But you had Race score inside early. You had a couple other plays in the first, 8 minutes where got some lobs to those guys and things like that. So I think good for IU from a game plan perspective to be able to execute, still getting their best players the ball and chances to score against a little bit different defense. I'd love to hear coach's thoughts on a 2-3 zone that allows you to enter the ball directly to the block from the top of the key. I thought that was an interesting strategy that they employed in the second half. A nice pass by Xavier, but just kind of funny, to watch a zone allow that kind of pass. But yeah, like I said, kudos to IU. They didn't settle for a lot of threes early, really rode those guys when they could, and they responded, and with the good games for both. And also, also just being able to get those guys some rest after playing some pretty extended minutes, where you see TJD played 24 minutes and Race only played 20, was another added bonus, even though they got their 30 points between them, I think, before they went out.
Coach, any thoughts on those two guys? Clearly Indiana's leaders.
One, the rebounding, the offensive rebounding, that's always going to be a plus. And I think we have 2 real quick off the ground rebounders that's going to make a difference come Big Ten play. So that's a number. The points are just getting regular. We could talk about the points, but the rebounding. The other thing is Trace Jackson-Davis, 6 for 6 from the free throw line, because if he's going well, he's going to get a lot of coverage and he's going to get fouled. And if he can hit, he's not going to hit 100% all the time, but if he can get 75% of his free throws, he's going to get a lot more points and put Indiana in a very good position. So he did all the things he's supposed to do. I didn't like the not block out at the end of the half. So there's 2 points in that three. That's Indiana should have been up about 11 in the first half. But again, everyone has a slip up here and there. I just think it's great. As far as the block shots, I don't mind him going for block shots. He's got to be the second guy off the floor. You're quick enough, Trace, to be second guy off the floor and throw it into the balcony. You don't have to be going for fakes. Going to really work on that. And then the other thing is, don't go if Race has him bodied up, because not too many people in the Big Ten are going to be able to shoot over or through Race. And sometimes I think Trace Jackson-Davis goes to help post to post when he doesn't need. And then you got the dump downs late against Wisconsin, which hurt us because he left early. The guy wasn't going to score. And then you give up offensive rebounds because we do have struggles getting down and blocking out. We call it cracking down on the big when we have to rotate over, and we tell our wings in our program, crack down. We just have difficulty doing that because of who we have on the wings. So I think it's something obviously the coaching staff's aware of and will continue to work on. But again, just solid. We need to appreciate these guys while we have them, because it's just fantastic, the effort that those two give.
Yeah, Coach, you made a good point about Trace. There was one possession where he ended up blocking 2 shots on the same possession where he did exactly what you talked about. The guy tried to back him down. That was a little bit different than, the one where he really flew by the guy was a drive where he's, in motion. But the one where the guy tried to post him up, he held his ground, waited till he shot, blocked it. Guy gets it back, does the same thing, blocks it again. So something to look for. I don't know if it's as much of, when he's in that position and it's a little bit more stationary versus on the move or whatever the case may be. But to your point, he still has plenty of ability to block those shots when he's not being overly aggressive, for sure.
And you know what? It doesn't really matter because we've got Logan Duncombe out there being a combination of Alan Henderson and Eric Anderson in case anything happens. So
I tell you what, we're gonna love that guy before he turns his uniform in. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
I agree. I already do. You can see it. Okay. Coming up here as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's big victory over Merrimack today, we'll point out today's meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
This is Verdell Jones. What's better than an epic buzzer beater? A full court dribble and a perfectly placed pass to set it all up. And of course, celebrating with Hoosier Nation afterwards. So join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Had to pick that one on an anniversary like this, You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris. I'm here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Andy Bottoms. We are breaking down Indiana's victory over Merrimack on Sunday afternoon at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And guys, it's time for today's meaningful moments that you might have missed. And there's a couple moments for me that stood out about Rob Finney, who I thought, did some good things today, but also showed us some of the things that are kind of holding him back. You go back to the first half when it was 30-24. And Indiana really did a nice job in this one possession, getting Merrimack zone moving. Rob had the ball at the top of the key with lots of options. He had a lane to drive. He could have driven and kicked. I think either Leal or somebody was out on the wing. Maybe it was Parker Stewart. And then he also had a big who was over there in the short corner that pretty clearly, if he drove, the guy was going to step up and he could, dish it down. And Rob has had an issue sometimes in these moments of just going, instead of kind of overthinking, just going. And in this case, he went. He was aggressive. The defense came to him. He dropped it off to Trace for a dunk. It was exactly what you want to see from Rob. Then there was a possession in the second half where something similar happened. He got the advantage on the defense. Pretty clearly, if he had just kept driving, he would have been able to drive and kick or dump it down to the big man. And instead, it's like there was an invisible force field that no one else could see from him. And he turned around and threw it out to Jordan Geronimo, who took that contested three that I don't think Mike Woodson liked very much. And so, Coach, that is kind of what we're fighting with Rob a little bit, which is when he's aggressive, when he just plays by instinct and doesn't, kind of overthink it. He makes good plays and gets the ball where it needs to go. But there are these possessions every game where it just feels like he's overanalyzing it, and sometimes just doesn't trust himself or doesn't trust what he's seeing almost, like a new quarterback who's kind of looking at the field and doesn't trust what he's seeing and will back it out or kind of throw it back out to someone behind the 3-point line, even though he's got an advantage in the lane. So I thought there was much more good than bad from Rob today. Don't get me wrong, but those two possessions kind of sum up. We've got to get more of the first, less of the second, and it's going to make him a much more productive player off the bench for Indiana.
Yeah, I think y'all were real tough on Rob. I thought Rob played fantastic today. That was probably the one thing I think Rob got caught on an under in a down screen situation and gave up a 3. But if we could bottle this Rob Finney for the whole Big Ten, I think Indiana's going to get a few wins. I thought he was fantastic. I think sometimes it gets etched into our memory, and it happens to me too. Like, that is Rob's issue. Like, when he's aggressive, and so when you see that non-aggressive play, boy, that sticks in your memory a lot more than his aggressive play. I thought he was really, really good passing the basketball. I thought he was really, really aggressive at a time. He got stuck on that pass out to Geronimo. I think he had the lob there again, but you coach to perfection, and you're absolutely right. There were a couple things where he did revert back, but I thought today he was fantastic. And again, I think a lot of times the general fan forgets a little bit about how solid he is defensively. I thought he made guys take contested twos today. And I really think if you break down the point guard play, Rob was the better point guard today. Now, X had a great second half. He had 4 assists in the second half. But there was a segment where X had a turnover. Then he had a quick three that missed. Then he had another turnover. Then he made a 3, and then he had a bad pass. And that's just as inconsistent in his decision-making. It's just the point guards have been an issue for Indiana. So I think X still has some. He got talked to in second half because X comes out and gets 4 assists. I think he had 0 assists in the first half. X was a playmaker in the second half. I thought Rob, again, I think Rob's going to get 15 to 18 minutes. If he can do what he did today, Indiana's a better ball club.
All right, Rob was better today. Here's the thing, though, with Rob is we also had, I do think you're right that sometimes there's an anchoring effect where it's like you see the one time when he, makes a non-aggressive play and then that kind of links up to your preconceived notion of him. But the other thing to remember is, and it was good, he had 4 assists, only 1 turnover. That's really good. But the other problem is he is not giving Indiana any scoring and didn't again today. Missed his 3 shots, didn't score. And that's the one thing that X gives. Now, he's got to be more consistent, but X scored 9 points. And so that's the thing with Rob is when he's playing well, he's getting the assists, he's moving the ball, but he just hasn't been giving Indiana any scoring punch.
As a backup point guard, does he need to score or does he need to come in and run the show and play defense?
I mean, it'd be nice to get some scoring if he's going to be playing.
I don't disagree with you on that, but X is much better. We're going to be better when X is out on the floor playing well. He has got that wide variance, the floor versus the ceiling or whatever. I'm not going to pull a Michael Jordan here. The floor is the ceiling or whatever comment.
Ceiling is the roof.
Oh, the ceiling is the roof. Yeah. But his role now is defined as coming in that second unit and stopping someone defensively and getting into the offense. If he can just get there, I think I would be pleased with it. And then scoring is like icing on the cake for me.
Yes,
would be.
See, I would agree. I would agree with that if we weren't playing these first 5, second 5s. Because then when he's kind of leading the second 5, you need more scoring out of your point guard. Now, Woodson did play some with X and Rob together today, which I like.
I do like that.
But that's someone in the chat put scoring is overrated, and I think they were actually being serious. I mean, look, I love Rob, and I think we saw more good from him, Andy. I just, that's kind of the next step for him is, can he start making those outside shots consistently? When Xavier, the difference between the two is when Xavier gets an advantage, gets a step on guys, he attacks the basket and scores in those situations. That's still the missing piece for Rob. And if it comes, it makes him even better. That's all I'm saying. And if we're going to keep playing the rotations the way we are, it's going to be hard to not get scoring from him with that second unit.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things that I wanted to bring up, so I'll try to try to organize my thoughts here a little bit. I think one of the challenges is playing the groups of players the way they are, because I think that does put more pressure on Rob to score. Now, he was one that was out there a little bit with at least a few of the starters as they went. But when that second five went in, the way that I had captured it, I think they got outscored 8-3 during the stretch where that was before they started putting in any of the other. Then they put like 3 starters back in, and then by the time the other 2 were back in, and you had all 5 starters back in, you'd gone from a 10-point lead to a 3-point lead in the aggregate. But so I do think that puts a little bit of that pressure on Rob. There was another good play that he made that I'd written down as a meaningful moment. I think they'd gotten it off an offensive rebound, were patient offensively. Leo fills the space at the top of the key, and Rob is in the lane, is patient, finds him, and hits a 3. I just don't know. Part of this feels like I don't know if it's – I'm not sure you're going to get scoring out of Rob at this point. Like, he kind of feels like he is what he is, so I don't know that it's worth debating whether he should do that, because I just don't know that you're going to. What I think you need to do is try to figure out how to maximize what he's doing with the way that he's playing, which is probably not to put him out there with 4 other bench guys. Because, with a really good drive that he had where he went, he dished it off to TJD. Obviously, that's a guy who has some pull on where the defense is going and opens some things up for Rob to be able to drive. Doesn't mean that there won't be games that he scores a little bit, but 4 assists, 1 turnover. Thought he made a lot more good decisions than bad over the course of the game, but I just don't know that it's realistic to think he's going to score even at the free throw line. Not sure he looked even super comfortable there. The ones that went in were, kind of rattling around the rim and eventually went in that regard. And then with Xavier, I thought Jess Settles made I think whatever he said, he's coachable but emotional, I believe was the way that he described him, which I thought was really good. Maybe I just wanted it. Maybe it's the same kind of like confirmation bias that you guys were talking about. Like, I just wanted to agree with somebody who wasn't Stephen Bardo on the broadcast. But I thought it was apt, because when the starters came back in the end of the first half was when that stretch that coach talked about. They'd gotten the lead down to 3. He comes in, immediately makes a bad pass turnover, takes a 3 quick in the possession. Now Race bails him out and gets a putback, turns it over again, then makes a 3. And then I think there was another pass there. He got taken out almost immediately after that. And Woodson's given these guys a decent amount of rope, I feel like, in the other games. I mean, anybody, obviously people have feelings about the Wisconsin game about how much rope he gave some of the guys. But and he took him out, didn't play him the rest of the half until the very last possession out there. And I think really tried to rein him in. And then you saw him apply some of those things in the second half. To talk about the coachability standpoint, Coach, you talked about that. There was Kopp had hit a 3 in one corner. Somebody kicks it out to X. He's got a shot that he could have taken that was a wide open 3. He passes the ball to the corner, gives up the open shot to a guy who just hit one, and makes a smart decision, the kind of decision that you want your point guard to make to to pass up a good shot to get a great shot. So it just is how you rein him in, and it's kind of like we talked about on Assembly Call Radio the other night. Like, he and Rob are so far apart just in terms of complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think it swings things a lot for the offense when one is in versus the other. But I think that coachable and emotional thing is kind of the frame of reference I'm going to use with X throughout the season. But I did think he applied some of those things in the second half and kind of let some of the emotion get out of it and just played and did the things that he was able to do. Had a number of really nice passes in that sequence.
That's why I thought some of the reaction after the Wisconsin game was insane. I mean, Xavier didn't play well, and he did force some shots in the second half, but he's not a selfish player. He's an aggressive player, who will take what the defense gives him. And a lot of times that's what was available against Wisconsin. But I don't think he's selfish, So, and I think he's had really good shot selection on 3s this year too, which has actually helped him improve his efficiency, even though, obviously he's not going to be a high volume guy.
I think his big learning point is how to play with the players Indiana has. I think at Pittsburgh, he had a lot of weight on his shoulders. And I think when it comes down to pressure situations, sometimes I think he reverts back to where he was at Pittsburgh, where he was the guy. And I think you saw that's not selfish. That's overplaying. That's over. Tamar defensively today was playing too hard instead of executing. You brought up the word execution. I think that's huge with this team. This team, sometimes I know you're not going to believe what I'm saying, but you play too hard or you try too hard and you try to hit those, what we call home runs instead of singles or doubles. The second half, and And that's where I go back to Rob. Rob's all about singles and doubles because I'm not sure he can go out and get the home run. He's like a shortstop that bats 212. You know, he's going to
do some sack bunts too.
He'll do some sack bunts, right? Rob knows his role, and Rob wants to win. X knows his role and wants to win. I think X just needs to get to a point where he trusts everybody and trusts the offense. And he listened at halftime. And the ball moved. The one more passing in the second half was just a thing of beauty. Leal does that. Our guards were, I believe, 13 assists to 6 turnovers, maybe 13 to 7. I did some quick math here. That's fantastic. I think Leal passes the ball well. I think Stewart passes the ball well. And yes, each one of those, we can go pick that one turnover. Stewart had a bad pass. Rob had a bad pass. I even had it in a Discord. Finney, yes, on the lob for a dunk. And then his next time down, he made a bad pass. Finney, no. You're going to have that, but you want your guards to be aggressive. But 13 assists to 6 or 7 turnovers from your perimeters. I just loved watching Anthony Leal pass. And I thought Rob did a good job. I loved X's passing in the second half, not so much in the first half. I think the point guard play has got to get better. I think Woodson would still admit that. It's got to play that 40 minutes. But I thought it was I thought it was solid. And I think Andy's comment about they're two different people probably is the one we all got to get a handle on, is that X is going to be a scoring point guard. He needs to be more of a leader of the offense. Rob is a leader of the offense. Or he needs to be more of a scorer. So their strengths and weaknesses are opposite.
100%. Well, and this, I think leads to the other discussion just about this whole, playing the first 5, second 5, which is kind of how it's done in the NBA. And I've been open-minded with it. We're only 10 games into Coach Woodson's tenure. So anybody making definitive judgments is crazy to me. But I'm starting to come to a more definitive judgment on this, which is that I really don't like it. And the reason why I don't like it is I feel like it does a disservice to the bench guys. I think Tamar Bates would be much better served playing in a complementary role with Race and with Trace and with, some starters out there, as opposed to having to be one of the go-to scorers on a bench unit for 6 straight minutes on the court. Same with Rob. I think I would love to see Rob play half his minutes as an off guard with Xavier Johnson so he can take a defensive assignment and then also just be a guy that plays catch and shoot and secondary playmaker where he's better. So I would love to see that staggered. Are you, do you guys have, can either one of you make a case in favor of the first 5, second 5? Because I think we're all starting to come to the conclusion that we don't like it.
I need to get used to it because I prefer what you say is mixing players with starters to maximize. Like Tamar's great too. Like I'd love to see Tamar if they have to double down against Race or TJD and have him be able to drive and do some of those things. So I am 100%. But I'm also trusting Coach Woodson. He even came out and said, I think Settle said something about he's got to communicate better at the end of game situations. And I think that's great self-evaluation. Woodson is honest even about himself. I just really appreciate that as a coach. I don't think he needs to tell media people that, but as long as he is evaluating, that's great. But I'm trusting him. And there is a cumulative effect that is hard to see sometimes when we're watching those 5 get outscored 8-3 or struggle together. And the fact is that if the hope is you get all your guys that set minutes of time, they're going to be rested for the end of the first half, end of the second game. It didn't play out at Wisconsin. That's what Woodson probably would tell us. The other thing is everyone knows their role. You know that if you're off the bench, you're going to get 5 or 6 minutes of serious run together. You're prepped and ready to go instead of just game flow. I imagine that's what Woodson would tell us. Whether we're buying that or not, that's open for discussion. It's kind of like a pressing team that gives up 4 layups early in the game, but by the middle of the second half, that team, the opponent is worn out, and then the game explodes from a close game to, I think that's probably the mindset, and also coming from the NBA, I'm going to trust Woodson on it. It kind of bothers me as a fan, but as a coach, I like to have my better guys in there and mixed in. But I'm going to trust him a little bit. I think that's the argument for it if you wanted to make it.
Yeah. Andy, thoughts on that?
I'm a little bit like Coach, where I definitely feel like it's an adjustment to watch because it doesn't it's definitely not what we're used to. The flip side, if the other argument that I would make for it is, at least in some of these cases, he's letting that group play out there together for a little bit, and you're letting some of those guys actually get into some semblance of a rhythm, as opposed to you're in for 2 minutes and then you're yanked back out and you really touch the ball 3 times and then you're done. So I think there's value in that piece of it. And a lot of it boils down to, like, if you decide that you're comfortable or you want to, or whatever the case is, you want to play 10 guys, then to a certain extent, I'm not sure how else you do it. Because otherwise those minutes, if you're trying to kind of mix and match 5 subs with the starters, you run out of time pretty quick or you're really cutting into the minutes that the starters are playing. So I think part of that is you could change that if and when he decides he wants to shorten that rotation a little bit. But for now, he seems pretty committed to playing 10. And if you're going to do that, then I guess it makes some sense. But I was tracking the results in the second half. They weren't good at the onset. And then the starters never came back in, and IU kind of ran away with it. But the first few minutes those guys were in there together in the second half wasn't great. They kind of played him even, as opposed to, falling behind, though. And then I think at that point Lander came in, and I kind of stopped looking at what the that score was, because it became pretty apparent that the starters weren't going to come back in, so there wasn't going to be a comparison point.
Yeah, it'd just be interesting. I mean, NBA teams play 9-10 man rotations, but very rarely does a really good college team in February and March play a 10-man rotation. So
yeah, you also got 8 extra minutes to play with in the NBA, which
right, that's what I mean.
To try to figure that out, but
that's what I mean. So I'm staying open-minded about it, but I'm starting to develop feelings. So just thought I would express those.
Well, and I think part of that is also the way. I mean, we saw that
it's
in the
like
Wisconsin
dating
game, right?
again, right?
Like but part of that was that was one of the things in the second half of the Wisconsin game where it kind of got away from him, was doing that. So I think in the first half it probably makes some sense. I just don't know that you can go to it religiously in the second half as you're going through and trying to navigate games that way. Maybe the second half is where you shorten that rotation a
Andy,
little bit. Doing that.
That's a great point too. I don't necessarily mind it in the first half, but going to the 6-minute mark, when was it? Was that a Syracuse or Wisconsin or Syracuse game when that happened? Yeah, that again, it's just odd for me to see that in college. So, but again, I'm gonna still stay somewhat open-minded about that.
All right, let's go inside the numbers, fellas. This segment sponsored by the Power Rank, where our friend Ed uses data and analytics to make accurate football and college basketball predictions. Ed, also a Michigan grad, so things are kind of back to normal for Ed here, as the football team is, doing really well. The basketball team struggling a little bit. Ed also writes an incredible March Madness guide every year, which we will have a special offer for you on once March rolls around. For now, if you want sports betting advice with a PhD edge, or if you just like understanding sports at a more analytical level, you should subscribe to Ed's free newsletter. You can do that at thepowerrank.com/AC. That's thepowerrank.com/AC. All right, let's dissect the numbers here. I think the top line numbers, Indiana scores 1.246 points per possession, which is very solid. They hold Merrimack to 0.778 points per possession for the game. Andy, to your point from earlier, 0.576 points per possession in the second half. That is outstanding. The big number that everybody's going to be talking about coming out of this game is 54 rebounds to 16 for Indiana. That is really nice to see on an individual game basis. I don't think that's really translatable to Big Ten play. I continue to think that rebounding is more of a weakness than a strength for this team right now. But that's obviously good to see on a one-game basis. Andy, what numbers jumped out to you today?
Yeah, I think the rebounding, and I mentioned this earlier, I think that was a function of the way that Merrimack plays. They were just trying to get back, not get beat in transition, and they rarely, if ever, sent anybody to the offensive glass. So those are probably inflated a little bit, not to mention the overall size advantage that IU had in the game. If you're looking for things to nitpick, 10 turnovers in the second half. A few of those came late, but there were some that were in the – I think I had 3 in the last – maybe 6-8 minutes, but it wasn't all garbage time ones. Although to your point, it was a lot of the front court guys more so than the guards in general, as we look at that, or at least the guards who played a lot. But shooting wise, the overall shooting number is almost 52%. 3-point shooting was not great, just 5 of 16. Didn't really feel like IU forced them. They were really force feeding the ball inside. If you tell me Anthony Leal shoots 4 threes, I'm probably going to assume he hits more than one. I thought Parker Stewart got fouled in one, if not both of his 3-pointers that he had. So I'm not a huge concern. 22 of 32 from the free throw line. Would like to, did a great job getting there. We're in the bonus really, really early. But missed a few, missing 10 free throws over the course of the game is something I'm sure everybody will hone in on from that perspective. But, we talk about the rebounding, second chance points, 21-2, bench points, 34-2, points in the paint, or bench points, 34-8, points in the paint, 34-8. So a lot of good things in that regard. You could really tell what IU's game plan was, and they followed it in that regard really well.
Coach, any important numbers?
He took them all, both of you. I wrote down the points per possession.
I'm gonna be selfish, Andy.
Sorry,
that's okay.
Andy was like Xavier Johnson at the end of Wisconsin. There, just taking all the possessions. Right. Jeez, Bottoms.
He's just trying too hard. He's not selfish. He's just trying too hard to make sure the show is positive and headed in the right direction. And chat stays all right. We're just trying too hard here with a good goal. The points per possession are just fantastic. These teams can play. Merrimack beat Northwestern a couple years ago. That guy's doing a really good job in moving that team from Division II to Division I. They won their conference, I don't know, last year or 2 years ago. So that they have things headed in the right direction. And I know it's a cupcake schedule. We beat them by 30, but you still got to play. And that defensive thing, and we really, I think, some don't have the personnel to be this good defensively. I mean, Kopp and Stewart are here to shoot, and they struggle guarding off the bounce. But our activity off the ball and the rotations has been really good. In fact, it hurt us a little bit in the first half. We were over rotating, and sometimes 2 guys on the ball, and that's when they hit some of their shots. That's where it's easy to back a team back down into a good execution level than it is to encourage them if you're lazy. So that's where I took. I was excited the way they came out and played because they just were playing a little bit too hard. The other thing is I felt like they had a bad shooting night and it was 32%. That's kind of fun, guys. Stewart did get fouled, but he was 0 for 3. He's been shooting 49% coming in, and then you feel like, oh man, we didn't shoot well. And then you look at 32%. It's not 16. It's not 21%. It's 32%. And again, those were the 2 numbers. We already talked about the assist to turnovers. I think that was pretty good. On the turnovers, 10 of them were from post guys. Somehow we got to figure out how to have our post guys not turn the ball over. Durer had it poked away from him a couple times, a couple loose passes in there. When people start doubling and doing things, we have to be more sure with the ball from the post. If you look at that again, 13-7 or 13-6 assist to turnovers from your main ball handlers, that's a winning formula. So bigs, hold on to the basketball, do a better job with that. But those were the numbers that I think mattered from today.
Yep, I think that's a good summation of the numbers. All right, coming up here on the Assembly Call in our final segment, we are going to hand out our game balls and the Hoosier Hustle Award. We'll talk about any lingering questions coming out of this game and then look ahead to Indiana's next opponent. That's next on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey, it's Romeo Langford. What's the only thing better than hitting a game winner to beat Wisconsin? Celebrate it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Romeo. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 9,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. You can join for free at join.assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com. I am Jared Morris here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Andy Bottoms. And guys, it is time for our game balls from today's IU victory. I feel like there's several different ways that you could go with it. Coach, why don't you lead us off?
Man, this is kind of tough today. I'm going to go Race Thompson, 6 for 6. I thought he was really good, offensive rebounding, solid defensively. I think his efforts need to be recognized. So Race Thompson for me.
Okay. Andy, who gets your game ball?
Yeah, I was going to go with Race. Not that it was an incredibly easy decision, but he was definitely the one that stood out when it mattered a lot in the game. I think just continues to do a lot of different things on the floor. Did well on the glass, 3 offensive rebounds, and I think got 3 and 1 opportunities over the course of the game. Had the one nice tip in on the lob from Parker Stewart that was not the best thrown pass, but he managed to guide it into the basket. And I just thought it overall strong game for him, and one that he only played 20 minutes, but 14 and 7 in 20 minutes is pretty good. So yeah, he was of the starters. He's the one that stood out the most to me.
Okay. So Race gets the game ball. I'm going to throw in an undervote here for Trace Jackson Davis, who did lead Indiana in scoring, did lead Indiana in rebounds, did lead Indiana in blocks. So had a lot of production, and also 6 of 6 from the free throw line. I think that's really
important. He did not lead them in rebounds. Geronimo did lead them in rebounds.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, Geronimo did lead them in rebounds.
There's an undervote. Geronimo really could have been considered too.
He could have been considered.
He may come up here in a minute. Who knows?
He may. The one thing that I do want to mention about Trace, the one thing I want to mention about Trace, and I forgot to mention this before when we talked about him kind of going for pump fakes and him needing to be more disciplined. That is definitely true, and Big Ten teams are going to scout that. But Jess Settles should get a game ball because he was awesome.
He was good. He was good.
He definitely had the crimson colored glasses on, but I'm fine with that. That's all we need during an IU-Merrimack game. He's doing callbacks to Jay Edwards and Alan Henderson, and it was fantastic. So more Jess Settles on IU broadcast. But he made a comment about Trace with the block shots. And how many shots Trace altered that don't even show up in the stat sheet for block shots. And he said, I wish there was a stat that encompassed that. And obviously there's not a specific stat that encompasses that, but here are a couple of stats that do kind of show it. Indiana currently number 1 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense, holding opponents to 40.1% effective field goal percentage. That's incredible. Indiana number 2 in the country in 2-point field goal percentage defense, 38.5%. So that's where some of that comes in. As guys getting a little bit jumpy when they get down there, feeling like they have to alter their shots because Trace is around. So, this newfound Trace where he's attacking shots and blocking shots, yes, he's going to have to curb some of that over-aggressiveness, but there's also a benefit to some of that over-aggressiveness, which is that it's altering what other guys are doing. So I want to make sure that I point that out because that's a big part of the reason why Indiana's 2-point and effective field goal percentage defenses are so good. Okay, and now it is time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award!
Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, and hopefully, we've been saying future legend Christian Lander. Maybe we just need to back that to future rotation player Christian Lander and take some baby steps here. Evansville Security Services provides off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals throughout Indiana. Remember, prevention cannot be measured, so let Evansville Security Services help you prevent a bad outcome today. Go to evansvillesecurityservices.com to learn more. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com. Is there an argument for anybody besides Jordan Geronimo? Maybe we should go there. Should we just give this to Jordan Geronimo and then spend a few minutes talking about that young man who really had a nice bounce back today?
Yeah,
Andy?
I'm good with that. That's who I was going to go with.
Yeah.
One of the guys we've not really talked about a lot who hit those couple threes. I think Jeff just put this in the chat. Must have been reading my mind, but Miller Kopp hit those couple big threes early in the second half to really blow it open. One after IU had rebounded one of those missed free throws, and then the other on the play I referenced earlier to that Xavier Johnson made the pass to him. So I thought he had some nice moments in that stretch, but that was really just shoehorning him into the discussion since we hadn't talked about him yet. But yeah, Geronimo to me, 13 points, 13 rebounds, career high in both. I'm fairly certain, and just thought good for him to get some confidence because I think he was, he had not played well, quite honestly, in the few prior games. I thought it just got back a little bit to our points earlier of what he got back to focusing on the things that he did well and building off of those.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this earlier today, actually, because my mind often just randomly wanders to IU basketball thoughts. And Chronic Hoosier, mentioned it on Twitter, that it's unavoidable when you see games like this for Jordan Geronimo. you see the body, you see some of the movements, you're immediately going to think about OG Anunoby. I was actually thinking earlier today about where that player comp comes up short, because it's pretty obvious, that Jordan Geronimo is not on the level of an OG Anunoby, despite some of the athletic gifts. And some of the differences to me are just OG's general awareness. I think he had better body control than Jordan Geronimo and better touch, just as a shooter, as a passer. Those are some of the things I think that keep Jordan from being at the level of a guy like OG Anunoby. And Chronic said something interesting, which is that he's almost better to compare to AJ Moye in some senses, because of the hustle, ability to get tough rebounds. And look, no player comp is perfect. We don't even need Ryan here to tell us that. But I do think, I almost like that player comp a little bit better for Jordan. But it's nice on a day like today that you can think about guys like OG Anunoby and AJ Moye, because they're two great players in IU history. And it also says something about Jordan's potential, because we see the potential that he has. And I think for this season especially, if he can focus on being that hustle guy, being that toughness guy, the offensive rebound guy, the guy that comes in and gives you energy plays, that's what this team needs from Jordan Geronimo. And we can worry about the other stuff as an upperclassman. So this, I guess, to answer my own question from earlier today, what from today can, is translatable to Big Ten play, Andy? I thought you answered it well. Being that guy that he was today off the bench, especially for a team that may struggle from a rebounding perspective, is really going to be important in there's certain Big Ten matchups where it'll be extremely important. And so hopefully he can bottle that and carry it forward. Any thoughts from either one of you on Jordan before we move forward?
He's just a great athlete. And we said it earlier, you can do so much with an athlete. And I would like to see him be better off the ball defensively. That's an area of growth for him. But, man, just keep going, getting rebounds and making sure, you're cleaning up around the rim when you get offensive opportunities. He can hit open threes, but make sure you just take good shots, Jordan. But what a great guy to have come off the bench. For all the things that you said, Jared, the energy. And when you just leap up and grab an offensive rebound, it demoralizes the other team. One, because you're not as good an athlete as he am, and he just, boom, goes, So, yeah, I just think that's his niche. Carve it out, make it excellent, and help us win basketball games.
So a couple lingering questions coming out of this one. One is, I saw some good reports from before the game that Trey Galloway looked a lot better in pregame, taking some shots, doing some things with that wrist, and so hopefully he can get back out there soon. And I guess one of the questions, Andy, would be, we already talked about how big the rotation is right now. Well, Trey was a guy who was firmly in that rotation. And I think it's pretty easy to see some of the things that he does, why it's going to be hard for a coach to keep him off the court, even with some of his shortcomings. But you've had Anthony Leal kind of step up and I think really earn a strong look in the rotation. So what happens when Trey Galloway comes back? What do you think, about the rotation when that happens?
It's a great question. It seems like Leo would be the guy most likely to lose some of those minutes just from a positional standpoint. I think Leo has played, one thing I like about Leo is it'd be a great example to show like young players. I was talking to my team this week about being ready to catch the ball and shoot. He's always there, got his hands out, ready to catch the ball, go into a shot. But, I don't think you can. I mean, we're talking about how we're struggling to reconcile playing 10 guys. So I don't know how you can just add, a net of one, another guy to it and then start playing 11. So I guess it feels like Leo would be the guy most likely to do that because Durr clearly has a role as the, TJD backup. Geronimo, I think, has carved out a role. We've talked about the point guard position with Rob. You've got Scoop in there. So like, who do you really, Leo feels like the guy that you'd end up giving his, wouldn't end up losing his minutes, but maybe it's more of a game by game and matchup based scenario. But I do think the fact that Leo has played well and you've got some of these other guys in there, it does give you time where you're not trying to rush Galloway back. He may be trying to rush himself back because he strikes me as a guy that really wants to be out there. But I think you can be absolutely sure that he's healthy before you get him back in. And I guess that's a good problem to have.
By the way, we just got a tweet from the great Diane Phillips, one of our best listeners, who wants us to know that Ryan is not asleep. He's actually helping them decorate. So we just wanted to set the record straight on that. So the other lingering question, as it seems to be every game, is about Christian Lander and Christian Lander's playing time. There was a quote from Mike Woodson where he said, someone asked him about Lander getting minutes. He said, he played 7 minutes tonight. I thought he fit in just fine. This is not about Christian. This is not about Rob or Xavier. This is about the name on the uniform. I think some people may be reading into that, and I don't want to read into that at all until hearing like the full context of it. And there may not be anything. Mike Woodson's point may be like, I'm not interested in answering questions about a specific guy's playing time because this is about the team. I think people may be taking that, is Christian not committed to the team or something like that? I would really hesitate. I would tell you to hesitate before leaping to any conclusions there. But it is, Coach, it's going to continue to be a question, about Lander. Should he be getting more minutes? It's one of those things like, which comes first? Do you need to see Lander really producing a ton on the court, or does he need more playing time to get comfortable to kind of unlock some of the things that we need to see and what's better for this team long term? And Coach Woodson, of course, is thinking, how do I win this next game today? So there's a whole lot of variables here at play, I guess, is what I'm saying. And it's, I'm sure, not as simple of a decision as we sometimes make it out to be.
No, you trust Coach Woodson. Anthony Leal started doing stuff in practice. Anthony Leal started playing. If everyone who wants Christian Lander to play encourage the young man to get done whatever Coach Woodson wants done in practice. It's not about game time. Yes, you do. Obviously, game time minutes and experience is very, very, very important. But what Coach Woodson was hired, and what we all love about Coach Woodson, is he loves Indiana and the name on the front of the jersey. It's not about any one person. It's about winning basketball games. And it's awful hard to have 3 point guards in a rotation. It just is. And I think that there's a level of trust with Coach Woodson, with Xavier and Rob. And we just don't know. That's the honest. We don't know what the conversations are. We don't know what's going on to practice, but I will almost guarantee you that until whatever criteria Coach Woodson has set for Christian Lander to play is met and met consistently, he's not going to play. So I would just count on him not playing until that unforeseen, unknown thing to all of us happens, because that's what happened with Leal. And he's getting a little more run now. And Woodson said, boy, in practice, he's really caught our eye. Look for Leal to play a little bit more. And he played a little bit more. I just think that's it. It's hard for us as fans in this day where we want to see things with our own eyes. But coaches are going to play people who win basketball games in their mind. And sometimes we make mistakes. But I am just a huge trust Coach Woodson with the rotations, with subbing, with who's playing, who's not playing. I don't think he'll play until he's ready, and I don't think he's ready.
I think,
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you watch him come in the game, that Just Settles referenced it, whether that was a conversation he'd had with Woodson, but it was largely defensive related. I mean, he got driven. I think one of the first times he guarded a guy coming up the floor, he ended up with a couple fouls, trying to body guys and really struggling to contain the dribbler. I think we might be thinking that it's something more complicated than that. I'm not sure that it is. Doesn't mean that there's not things that he can do on the floor, because he's shown those things. I think that's what becomes difficult for people, where, you've seen him respond in some fairly big moments for the team this year in the games when he was playing in some regard out of necessity, unfortunately, where it was kind of clear whether it was because Rob was hurt or other guys had fouled out or whatever the case may be. And he responded in those situations, which is awesome. I think it speaks well to what he can be, but I also think you can watch the games and see, if you want to find reasons that he's not playing, I don't necessarily know that you have to look super hard to find them. Had a couple turnovers today. Now, you could also make the argument he's pressing because he wants to play more, and that could be 100% valid. All we can really go on, unfortunately, as fans, is what we see in the games. And, I think there's been other games where I've come on here and said he shows you enough both ways within one game to say this is why he should play more and this is why he's not playing more. And I thought today he struggled defensively when he was in there and turned the ball over a couple of times. Doesn't mean you write him off and say that he can't play. But I think you can look at that and tell a story of that and say the things that Rob does well from a defensive standpoint are the things that Christian struggles with. And if that's what Woodson is going to focus on, and he's not willing to play 3 point guards over the course of the game, which to this point he hasn't been willing to, again, we can only go by what we're seeing. doesn't seem like he wants to do that unless the game's out of reach. That Rob's going to be that guy for right now. And as coach said, maybe you hear stuff later in terms of what Lander's doing in practice. He gets those opportunities and he steps up and performs well in those opportunities like he had earlier. But, I think it's just because the recruiting pedigree is going to be a constant question that gets asked. But, I would encourage people to go back and watch the minutes that he got in this game and the situation that it was. What did he do well? What did he struggle with? How does that correspond to whether he's playing or not playing? And might still come away with that and make the argument he should be in the game sooner. And if he was playing with different groups, he might play better. I don't know that that's wrong, but that's at least my read on it.
Yeah, to be fair, it's not just the pedigree. I mean, he's flashed some of the playmaking, but as Nick says, Lander doesn't play good defense. It's not rocket science. And I actually think, was it Occam's razor? The simplest explanation oftentimes is the right one. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. But I think in this case, that may be it,
It's over my head. So if you did, I didn't notice. So you're good.
That's like something Galen would say.
Let me try to quickly address the pressing issue because it happens. It happens when you're coming off the bench, you come in, you feel like you got to prove to the coach that you can play. And the best thing you can do to prove to the coach you can play is execute defensively and offensively. It's not the coach's job to give you 12 more minutes to get you to stop pressing. The time to stop pressing is immediately when the buzzer buzzes and you go in the game. It's about trust. And I thought Christian has played well this year when he's gone in, as Andy referenced. I just don't buy that you got to give someone 25 minutes or whatever, and then he'll get in the feel of the game and then he won't press. Everyone would feel that way. There's just not enough minutes to go around. And again, it's just got to be a practice thing. And I think Coach Woodson has shown whatever his criteria is, defense, offense, or some combination of such, that Christian is lower on the pecking order in practice. And let's go back to the summer. Everyone was loving Woody. Trust Woody. Trust him. Get a dollar bill, put in, Woody we trust on the dollar bill, and let's go. I think we're headed in a really positive direction despite a couple tough losses. And if Woody don't want to play him, then we don't play him. I mean, Coach Knight sat people and didn't play people, and we love Coach Knight. So I want Lander to play because if Lander plays, he's getting better and he's pushing in practice. That's the bottom line. And I root for him. But until then, whatever Woody wants, we're going to get. And I'm okay.
I like everything about that.
Damn right.
All right, let's look ahead. We've got a lighter schedule this week, as we typically do before the Crossroads Classic. So we have no episodes of the Assembly Call until Thursday night with AC Radio. Although I do think that Jeff and Kathy and their new show, Doing the Work, in which they are covering the IU women's team, I think I saw some text messages flash by during the game, but I didn't read them intently. I think they may have a show coming up about the women. So stay tuned for that. Be on the lookout.
Yeah, women got a big game tonight against Ohio State. So I assume whatever show they will have will be in relation to that.
Yeah, I don't think it's not going to be live after that show, but I think they may try to do one tomorrow. So anyway, be on the lookout for that. Andy, tell us about the Fighting Irish, who scored a big victory over Kentucky this weekend with a former IU target Blake Wesley hitting a big shot for the Irish.
Well, leading up to perhaps it's good. Well, I mean, it is good that they won that game because they beat Kentucky, but might be a good way to get IU's attention because coming into that game, their best game from a KenPom rating standpoint was against High Point. So that I think will at least allow Coach Woodson to get everybody's attention going into the Notre Dame game. They really had they played St. Mary's close in the Maui/Las Vegas Invitational, but they lost to them. They lost to Texas A&M in another fairly close game, and then lost by double digits at Illinois and at Boston College. So. A little bit of a tale of two teams here, which we're a little familiar with, I would say. Offensively is where they are most efficient, really struggle on the defensive end. Typically, they certainly didn't hurt that Kentucky was like 2 of 19 from 3 in that game yesterday, which I don't know how much of that you can attribute to Notre Dame's defense versus just, poor shooting or an off night or whatever you want to call it. So, I think it'll be a good test for IU's defense. Notre Dame, Mike Bray always have a good scheme on that end of the floor. So a lot of stuff to scout there and be ready for. But it is a game where you think IU should be able to get some things done on the offensive end as well. So like I said, probably a good thing from the coach's standpoint that they got that win, so that it doesn't feel like IU's just going to be able to roll in there and beat Notre Dame easily. So should be a good game, but one that IU needs to win from an NCAA tournament resume standpoint, and hopefully will.
You guys are two of the preeminent bracketologists in the world, both, I think, top 15 at Bracket Matrix. How big, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big is this game from a bracketology perspective, sitting here from your vantage point on December 12th for Indiana?
Probably.
Coach's arms are so wide that they can't even be seen on the screen.
Look at that wingspan on Coach there.
Yeah,
That was really
Andy will back this up. I don't know that it really helps us, but it hurts us if we lose. It's just important to get a non-conference neutral win. And hopefully Notre Dame then would continue winning and move up into maybe a quad 2 or something like that. But they're one in the hundreds now, even after this morning's new update. Which I did move Indiana back into our bracket as the last team in this morning because a lot of teams fell out yesterday. I got some heat a little bit for not including the Hoosiers Friday.
Yeah, I would agree with Coach. It hurts.
As you should. A lot of Indiana fans built that Delphi bracketology audience. Dang it. We expect special treatment.
I'll tell the guys we have to be a seed or 2 higher because we wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for Jared Morris and Andy Bottoms. That's right. Okay. IU is now a 5 seed tomorrow. IU is now a 5 seed tomorrow.
Don't put me in that. I didn't say that.
Andy's all about integrity of the December
I would agree.
brackets.
Yeah,
I want hope, damn it.
I would agree with Coach that it probably hurts you more if you lose than helps you if you win. Although the ACC is shaping up to be fairly wide open, so if you get a win, Notre Dame, I think has some decent pieces there. So if they work their way into a decent spot in the ACC, it ends up looking a little bit better later. It probably ends up being a quad 2-1 at best. I would be surprised if Notre Dame works their way into the top 50 to make it a quad 1 win, but got to win it first and then let the other stuff take care of itself. But be good to get a win away from home at the very least.
All right. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME, HOME, at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Gentlemen, it is time for last call. Closing thoughts on today's Indiana victory. Andy, your closing thoughts first.
Yeah, this is, there's not a ton of expectation, I think, coming into a lot of the games like this. And yet still think I found myself being a little bit disappointed in the first half performance, even though you know a little bit about what you get coming in. But a good bounce back from Wisconsin, got a lot of guys playing time. And I think those are probably the biggest takeaways where you're able to develop confidence. That's ultimately why you schedule games like this. That's ultimately why you have a couple left against Northern Kentucky and UNC Asheville, where you can give your starters some rest, give the other guys some confidence, like a Geronimo. Scoop came in, made a couple shots, even Logan Duncombe at the end, getting him some minutes. I think, in a lot of cases, those are your, main objectives when you schedule some of these games. So defense really responded in the second half. Offense came out, played well to start the second half and blew it open in a game that probably shouldn't have been as close as it was at the half. And now you move into finals week and a week to prep for Notre Dame, which is really, as we just talked about, the last key non-conference game on the schedule. You got a couple other home games that you should win pretty handily. So this is the next game is always the biggest in some regard, but in this case, it's true for sure. And so get them through the academic piece of the regimen this week and be ready to play against Notre Dame on Saturday.
Coach?
I thought it was a good performance today. I really thought Indiana accomplished what they needed to do against an opponent like this, especially coming off the heartbreaking loss to Wisconsin. You saw some individual performances that were really good. In any game, you're going to have some film that you want to go back and clean up. This could have been a lot messier coming off just that tough loss. So this pleased me today, and the word ultimately is going to be consistency. There was a little bit of lack of consistency in play today from individuals from game to game within the game today. And that's probably to be expected with the new staff and putting everyone together. Although we see teams that are Iowa State and other teams, Arizona, that have new coaches and everything that are that are being really successful. We're just 2 bounces away. I tried to sit back after this week. We're a couple bounces away from being undefeated, and everyone's just flying really high, and not to get so caught up. And, there's a couple stories that I really can't share. One I saw down at Indiana, covering Indiana. One was last night with our ball club after the game, where coaches and players and the relationships keep me in some perspective. I want to win. I want to play 40 minutes of perfect basketball. But Woodson's not only winning basketball games, but he's building men with the staff down there. And all good coaches and all good players do that too. And so I would always encourage everyone to hold us accountable as Assembly Call, hold us accountable as Indiana basketball, but put things in proper perspective. Enjoy your holiday season. Mrs. Tonsoni just texted me. She bought over $180 of booze for this week for celebrating Christmas. All's good. We're going to have some fun baking cookies and wrapping presents. And so this program is in better hands, guys. And today I thought reflected it.
I'll be there in a few hours, Coach. I'll see you soon.
Come on, bring the family. Well, bring the family. We'll have some high C for the youngins.
Coach, you took the point that I was going to make, which is, look, we're 10 games into the Mike Woodson era. He takes over a team that hasn't finished higher than 34th in KenPom in 5 seasons, and has actually spent more of the time, finishing in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And here Indiana sits, 27th in KenPom, even higher at Torvik, 8-2. And, they've had 3 top 100 games. They had a home win against St. John's that they won, and then 2 on the road that, yes, you can say you're a couple bounces. You can say you're a couple bad decisions away from winning those games. Indiana just wasn't quite ready to win those games yet, and it's a damn shame, because getting one or both of those would look incredible. But I think it's just a sign of where this team is. Like, I think 8-2 with the losses they have, that seems right for this group. And yeah, we all would have liked for Mike Woodson to come in and magically make the issues that we've seen in the past, go away. But a lot of the players are still the same. And so some of those issues are still the same. But I certainly feel better and more confident watching. And I feel better about the direction of the program. So, I think Indiana's in a good spot. Now, I think to really kind of capitalize on the start, they got to go get that win on Saturday. It's a really, really important game against Notre Dame. Indiana is better than Notre Dame, I think, player for player, and Indiana should win that game. And so they need to do that. But I think overall, I know there was a lot of disappointment after the Wisconsin game, especially in the hours after it. I got a lot of it in my inbox and on Twitter, and I understand the disappointment, and I felt it. But I think now, I hope with a couple days of perspective, we recognize that loss was devastating. It really was, the way Indiana lost. But there is something to be said for getting up 22 and for some of the good things that happened. And then I think overall, you kind of take the complete picture of what this first team under Mike Woodson is doing, on a roster that fits better than some recent ones has, but still doesn't fit perfectly together. I still think overall we've seen a lot of good things, and a team that is shaping up to be really competitive in what's going to be an insane Big Ten, apparently, as Minnesota just went on the road and beat Michigan by 10. So if you needed anything to know, about how crazy this Big Ten season is going to be, there's that. So hopefully Indiana can take the bad parts about the Syracuse and Wisconsin games, because there certainly were bad parts, and fix those. And you combine that with some of the good stuff they've done. And this is a team that I still think has a really high ceiling to be a lot better by February and March. But you can't just fast forward to that. You got to go through the ups and downs in November and December and January to get there. And as far as I'm concerned, we're right on track. Anything better than this would have been a nice bonus. I think, anything significantly worse than this would have been a disappointment and a concern. But I think we're right on track to be what I thought we would be all along, which is 6th, 7th, 8th in the Big Ten, maybe right above the bubble, getting in the NCAA tournament, as an 8, 9, 10 seed, something like that. That's what I thought is a fair expectation for this team. I think we're right in line to do that. Hopefully we can get better and bump up, ahead of that. But I just think it's easy to forget, kind of what the standards are and kind of what the perspective was from the beginning of the season once you get into the games actually happening. But I think Indiana's right on track, and I think this was a good performance. Put Wisconsin behind us. Let's look ahead to Notre Dame, and let's go get a big win in the last Crossroads Classic ever. which maybe we can talk about that on Assembly Call Radio on Thursday. Our thoughts on that. But that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson for all the great music that you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Thursday night. Until then.
Take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come, Mrs. Stansoni.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you guys for being here.
Anytime.
Fun show. Good performance.
Hey,
thanks. Appreciate it.
There's a good chance I will be at the Crossroads Classic.
Very nice.
We applied for media credentials from bracketology. We've gotten them several years down there. So hopefully through some other school that helps us get media credentials, we'll be down there. So if anyone's at the game, I'll probably be at the very top of the third level is where they put guys like me. Come find me, say hello. Let's talk a little Indiana basketball.
Would that be the same team that's currently down in the second half to Ken Palm number 79 as they continue to really perform well as the number one ranked team?
Yeah, how much does that suck, Jared? Like they're really good to us at Delphi bracketology, and you want to just hate them. You know what I mean? But they're really good to us. I
felt the same way.
Their SID just really helpful.
No, it's funny when my dad took the job at Purdue. You know, he was the defensive backs coach at IU under Mallory. Then he took the defensive coordinator job at Purdue. Yeah, I remember we went there, and I would always go in, with my dad to work, and then there's this series of underground tunnels that connected the football stadium where the offices were to the basketball arena. And I would, just kind of wander around there, and the lights would be off, but I'd go shoot around at Mackey or whatever. And I remember, Gene Cady would be there, and Frank Kendrick and some of the guys. They were so nice. I mean, just great. And I'm like, I'm supposed to hate you.
Exactly.
But they really were some of the and Painter obviously is a great guy. So I will always root against the black and gold, but that doesn't mean
absolutely
doesn't mean they don't have good people there. They do. And we can separate those things.
Absolutely.
But it is great to see them, as soon as it was clear they were going to be number one. They almost pissed away the game against Iowa. They lost at Rutgers, and now they're down by 10. I have a feeling they'll probably come back and win this one because NC State's not good.
I've watched NC State play a little bit. I wouldn't categorize this as wrapped up by any means.
No,
man,
no.
Jared, our math teacher, Steve Painter, I've made him the credentials in charge of the credentials, and that dude's been everywhere, man. He gets them at Ohio State. Football. He's been at the Horseshoe for Delphi. We don't even cover football. And he gets, I shouldn't say it out loud. People start denying us, but he went to Purdue Notre Dame game. He's a Purdue guy. He's been to Notre Dame football, Notre Dame basketball, Butler basketball. Wow. That's all he does. He shows up and does a little bracketing, and then I email him, hey, I need credentials to the Crossroad Classics. Okay. I'll apply for you, and then he'll let me know if I got them. I got my own credentials, man.
Good to have a guy,
I got a guy, man.
Good to have a guy, man.
But
it's good to have a guy. All right. Well, we'll be back for Assembly Call Radio on Thursday. No idea who will be here. Ryan will probably be back, so he can rant about the bad early start times on Thursday night.
I should be good to go Thursday.
Okay, and then we'll figure out our Christmas schedule. Things are always a little hairy around Christmas, but we'll make it happen.
Based on the way things are going, I expect to get whatever everybody else in my family has gotten somewhere around Tuesday. So consider me a game time decision for Thursday. It's about every couple of days somebody else ends up with it. So Mallory was today. So that puts me around the Tuesday timeframe. So I'll let you guys know.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody stays
planning
healthy
accordingly. So yeah. Well, that ship has sailed, so I'm the last man standing at this point. So we got one turn in the corner on the mend at least, so we're getting there.
Yes. Hey, by the way, the one thing that we didn't talk about today. We didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about Tamar. I will say, if you haven't had a chance to go listen to the recent episode of the Inside Scoop, I thought it was really good. Again,
Fantastic.
I don't say that because I was on there. I say that because I continue to be impressed by Tamar's willingness to just be candid and to talk about the stuff he does well, to talk about the stuff he doesn't do well. I asked him about the play at the end of the Syracuse game, where he went and trapped, which we talked about a lot on the postgame show. And, I think he gave a great answer, kind of made it clear that, there was kind of a miscommunication and he didn't do the right thing and took ownership of it. And I think, one of the things that stood out to me today, did you guys see, I think he took a quick shot or maybe a long shot. And the next time he was over by the bench, they showed Woody talking to him. And it didn't look like a friendly conversation. It was very much a one-way, I'm giving you a piece of my mind. And that, to me, the reason why Tamar, I think, is going to be so good. Obviously, he's got physical tools and all those things, but he just seems like a guy who really wants and accepts tough coaching. And this was kind of a forgettable day for him. He didn't make a huge imprint, made that 3. Like Coach said, kind of got out of position sometimes on defense. But I just think he has such a big ceiling as a player because of his ability to be self-aware and take good coaching. And so we forgot to mention that today, but I thought that really stood out for me.
That shows fantastic, Jared. You asked really good questions. It's really good listen. Listened to it on the way to our game the other night. Just good stuff. And you're right. That guy wants to play well. He wants to be developed. He always goes to what he could do better,
Yeah.
So just good work.
Cool. Well, that's it. We'll talk to you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your Sundays.
I'm gonna go drink. I drink and I know things.
That's
little hot cocoa with some peppermint schnapps, something, put some Christmas carols on. All's good. Tonsoni, Dad Tonsoni won last night, beat the Youngblood.
Yeah, that's right. The Tonsoni Bowl.
Yep,
I love Brent's Twitter feed. It is like the most coach speak Twitter feed. It's awesome. He
did a great job.
On to the next one. We're focused. It's like I can hear the Coach Tonsoni in these tweets.
There was a moment there in the varsity game where we were pretty physical and they missed a foul on us and we come down and score and he's up and he looks at me and he said, "That's bullshit." He said that. He goes, "That's a foul." And I went like this. I just went like this right back to him. And our friends across the way caught it. And it was so funny. And then in the JV game, he was mad. He was mad and I thought he was going to get a technical. And I went to him. Like good dad does. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Boy, I tell you what, his kids play hard, man. Our JV both JVs were 5-0. And Brent hadn't played a good schedule. He'd won a lot of blowouts and he was like, "Dad, we're not ready because we win by 40, 50 points against some of these teams." And boy, they played hard and he did some good things, called some good timeouts, but their varsity had a point guard out and it was close for a half and then we kind of blew it. We got an incredible kid, man.
What's his coaching philosophy? What does he run?
He's you know what? He's a great JV coach because he does whatever the head coach wants. No question.
Oh, yeah.
He's there to do, a lot of people sometimes their lower levels think it's their NCAA tournament and they want to play a boxing one and do all this stuff. Brent does, he goes in at 10 in the morning on game days to do laundry for the team. I mean, great.
That's awesome.
I'm biased, but
he's gonna
he's a man-to-man guy, motion man-to-man guy, but he runs some sets. So it was hard for me to coach because I always wanted to peek down and kind of watch,
see what he's doing. Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Glad it's over though, because man, it's emotional.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I bet it is.
So,
all right, everybody. Have a good Sunday.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Chat Mob. Really good Chat Mob today. Appreciate it.
It was a good chat today. We need to win every game by 37 points. Chat Mob
makes the Chat Mob easier. The only tough part was when someone said we're not a tourney team, and then everyone got mad. But we might not be. Just enjoy it.
Let the season play out.
That's right.
All
Don't
right,
listen to these bracketologists.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet.
All right. See you guys.
See y'all.
Bye.